New Thought Media Network and the Universal Joy Center are proud to bring you The Joy Show. One voice, one story, infinite inspiration. Join your host, Barbara Jean, every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Tune in live or watch anytime on youtube.com/@UJOYC. The Joy Show with Barbara Jean. The perfect way to get inspired on Friday afternoons. Only on New Thought Media Network. And please like, share, and subscribe. And now, let's join Barbara Jean on The Joy Show.
Welcome to The Joy Show. I'm Barbara Jean, your host. And joy is an acronym that means just one you. This show is about sharing stories that people have overcome difficulties, they've changed their lives, they've found their passion, whatever it is, the stories are interesting and inspiring. So let us begin with the land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, but we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech. Well, tonight or this afternoon, this morning, depending where you are in the world, today's episode is a little different. No guest today, no spotlight on someone else's journey. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on joy and on me. So this is a more personal episode. I'll be sharing, some of my personal stories, how I got here, and what inspired me to create this show. And the truth is, joy isn't something I figured out. It's just something I keep choosing. Really important for us to know that it truly is a choice. Okay, so how did this all come to be? Well, when I created this show, I think it's about 5 years ago now, the things that were happening in my life was I was achieving a kind of balance in my life, something different than I had experienced for quite some time. Life had been a bit of a difficulty and a challenge for me. So finding myself joyful, finding myself enjoying my life, happy with who I am, all of these things was really quite foreign to me. And might be to you as well, or maybe not. But either way, I had to find myself, decide to like what I found, and then live from that true, authentic self. So that's how this all got started. I realized one day as I was looking at the word joy, which I have on my altar and around my home, what I realized was joy is just one you. When we come to acknowledge or recognizing that there's just one of us and that we're created unique and special like everyone else, we start to realize that we have value and that our gifts and talents are something to be honored and to be appreciated. So have you ever started something before you felt ready? Just because your heart wouldn't let it go? Well, when I started this show, it really was about, how do I do this? What is involved in doing an interview style show, making it interesting and inspiring? Where do you get guests? There was a lot of questions that I had that I wasn't sure I could even answer. But all I knew was I really wanted to talk to people about the fact that joy already exists within them. They don't need to earn it. They don't need to go find it. They simply need to choose moment by moment to let it be the thing shining through. So I got a number of, different surprises and things when I started hosting this show. Some of the stories were really interesting. Most of the people I interviewed, the interviews were fun. We made them easy and comfortable so that people felt comfortable speaking and sharing what was going on for them. And I was really pleased with how people would open up and how easy it was to get guests on the show, actually. people were excited to be on the show. So a lot of what I thought about was, that I would be finding out about them and hearing their stories and being in awe of what they had accomplished. And all of that is true. But the other thing that happened was I think I changed. I got a whole new perspective on people and life. And I began to view things in a very different way. And what I realized was the show that I was creating, I thought I was creating a show, but what really happened is the show started shaping me. It changed me at depth. And that's something that really surprised me. I had no idea that that would occur, that somehow listening to other people's inspiring stories, what it helped me to see was that I too have an inspiring story, that I too have lived a life that you may or may not know about, and that through that life, I have discovered who I am, and I've come to a place of accepting me as I am, which, for some of us can be a bit of a challenge if we've had a bit of low self-esteem or whatever. But let me just go back a little bit more to the beginning, not necessarily of the show, but to the beginning of when I started this path of kind of waking up and becoming conscious of life. I was 27 years old, had recently separated from my husband, and was staying with a friend. I got a phone call from my mother-in-law inviting me to go to a church service on the Sunday night. And I was like, not really wanting to go. Church was not my bag. But I thought, you know what? I really want her to like me. And maybe this will make it easier for my marriage if, in fact, I can get along with my mother-in-law. So I decided to go. I decided that I would go to church with her, and surely I could endure 1 hour. So off we went. What was fascinating that night is the transformation that occurred. And I don't know why it occurred, but I guess the timing was right. Doesn't really matter what my expectation was walking into the church. What mattered was what happened as I walked out. And what I realized at the end of the evening's event, which was a video of a woman talking about death and dying, when I left the church that night, I was transformed. I had an epiphany moment where I knew God as love. Yeah, God is love. I could feel the energy of love vibrating through my entire being. This energy of, and not romantic love. I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about the energy of oneness, of acceptance, of, being okay with who I am. And it was interesting because as I was feeling this, I really became clear that there was something here for me, that this was for me. It was really important for me. And so I sat in the experience, and it didn't last a long time. It probably lasted about a week, where I really felt connected with the divine. And then it slowly started to wane, and, regular life kicks back in. But what's fascinating is, so that happened on a Sunday night. The following Saturday, I was back home with my family. And the Saturday, I sat back and I looked at my husband and I said, I'm going to quit smoking. Well, he got into a bit of a panic right away, going, no. I tried a few weeks earlier and became quite nasty, shall we say, grumpy, irritable, you name it. And so he quickly ran out and bought me another pack of cigarettes. But I smoked those because I had them. So I smoked them. And on Monday morning, when I went to work, I'm sitting in the cafe at work, and I'm talking to a friend of mine, and I borrow a cigarette off her because I finished mine. And I smoked that cigarette, I butt it out, and I looked at her and I said, that is the last cigarette you will ever see me smoke. until the next one. And I just left it at that. But here's what happened. I never had a single craving, not one. Not an hour after, not a day after, not a week after, not 6 months after. And now it has been over 40 years. It went away. I was smoking 4 packages of cigarettes a day, 100 cigarettes. And I quit cold turkey without any challenges whatsoever. And I know that sounds a little weird, but I think what happens, especially since I found this teaching, which I found much later, but in finding this teaching, what I realized is the power of the mind and the power it has to create our lives and moves us in a new direction. So by allowing myself to really go, whoa, if I keep smoking, I'll be hauling an oxygen tank around by age 40. That was the thought that went through my mind when I decided to quit. And so I just quit. I was done. Now, here's the other thing. I didn't get irritable. I didn't get, annoyed with people. I wasn't frustrated. None of those things happened. None of those things happened. I simply quit. And I was done with it. I was clear. And at that time, from my perspective at that time, it was like, the universe had taken this away for me. What I realize now is that I'm the one who took it away. So the journey that we're on, all of us, is really about finding ourselves and finding what really works for us. And for me, it was my spiritual connection. That was really so important to me. What I realized too is that this journey was, well, it was a little bit challenging because here I was in this fundamentalist church. I started attending. I attended every service they had. Their prayer service in the morning before the Sunday service, the Sunday morning service, the Sunday evening service, the Wednesday evening prayer group. I attended their games night. Everything they did, I went to. I wanted knowledge. I had this experience, but I wanted knowledge. And so I'm listening and listening, but I'm not getting what I thought I needed. See, I had been shown or experienced this divine energy as love, as possibility, as acceptance, as oneness. But I was being taught in the church that we were the only ones who could ever go to heaven. Everyone else would go to hell. And I couldn't reconcile it with what I had felt. I knew that the universe was not a judging universe, or God was not a judging God. So it changed my perspective on things. And I stayed in that church for about 1.5 years. And then I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't get answers that made sense to me. So I decided that I had to leave. And I was talking to a friend of mine who did personal development training. And I was chatting with him and I said, I'm going to really miss this. And he said, why don't you try the spiritual center in Calgary? And so I did. At the time, it was called the Center for Positive Living. And I went there, and the very first time I was there, I just felt this incredible love. The whole place was just filled with it. The energy was beautiful. And I was like just absolutely taken aback by it. Like, this place exists? How did I not know? And so that started my journey of really exploring my spirituality in a deep way and beginning to experience it more fully, which has then led to experiencing more joy, which has led to the creation of this particular show. So I think on my journey, like even when I started the show, I wasn't necessarily confident. So joy doesn't mean confidence all the time. Sometimes joy is just showing up while your knees are shaking. I remember the first time I spoke publicly, it was at that fundamentalist church. It was on a Sunday night. I had attended a missionaries meeting the week before with two other women from the church, and we had been asked to come back and report on what had happened. And so the other two women went first that night, and I was really nervous. I'd written out my speech and practiced it numerous times and just trying to get it perfect and make sure it was between the 5 and 7 minutes that the minister had asked for and all this stuff. And the first woman gets up and she said, "That was really great." And then she went and sat down. She might have said a couple other things, but that's basically what she said. And I'm looking at my husband's grandmother who was sitting beside me, and I went, like, "Did I do this right?" And she just patted my leg and said, "Just trust God. It's okay. Don't worry about what anybody else does." And it's great advice. And it's great advice still. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Just take accountability for your own self. The next woman gets up. She did basically the same thing. I don't think she was up for even a minute at the podium. And that was my turn. And I was new. I'd only been attending this particular congregation for about 3 months at that time. So I stood up and I had my stack of notes and I read the first page, and my hands were trembling, like just uncontrollably. So I held the edge of the podium and spoke. I have no idea what I said after that first page because I couldn't turn my pages at all. And I spoke for 7 minutes. And when I left the stage and went back into my seat, everyone in the place was in tears. I have no idea why. But something that I said about this missionaries conference, something about it had really touched them. And that surprised me because I had never spoken publicly other than being forced to at school on occasion. So when I was standing at the podium, my knees were shaking, my hands were shaking, I was a mess. But I gave a speech that transformed everyone in the room. Who knows how, who knows why, but I really think of that as, grace, that something happened that really, really touched me. When I knew that I wanted to be a minister, I was asking about it because I was called immediately. When I had that epiphany, I was called to minister. And so I'm asking, how do people become ministers here at this church? And was told, well, women can't be ministers. Only men can. And I thought, well, that's weird. And then when I found the center, it was like there was a woman minister. So that was one positive thing right away. So the joy that I experience now is as a direct reflection of the journey that I walked from my time of a raging, angry, broken mess of a woman into the woman that I am today. And today I experience joy so much easier, so much. It's just, I'm pretty happy with my life overall. So what I realized in the whole thing is that whenever someone on the show shares their truth with me, it just reminds me why joy matters. Not the bubbly kind, but the brave kind. The kind that we share when we're, having a bad day or a rough time, and yet somehow we can still smile at a baby or say hello to a stranger. We can still do kind and loving things because we know that the event that is happening doesn't define us. So as I was, working on this idea for this show, I was thinking about some of the stories that people had shared with me over the years and realized that, there's so much about life that is so truly interesting. And my story is an interesting one as well. I was, a bit of a troubled kid. I felt unloved. I felt like I didn't really belong. And so I went through life kind of fighting it. And when I was 11 years old, my parents separated and then divorced. And I took that personally. I was humiliated by that event. I didn't know how I would ever face the kids at school, my neighbors. Like this just didn't happen, at least not to anybody I knew. And so it was a huge embarrassment. And I remember, uh, you know, getting out of the house and just being angry all the time. And my parents took me to a psychiatrist, and that was, I felt, a total waste of time. Um, but things got really, really rocky. My mom left town, went to another town, took us kids. So we didn't get to see dad for a number of months. And then he picked us up for Christmas and kept us. Today, that would be called kidnapping because she had custody. But anyway, he kept us. And that brought other challenges. My brother wanting to, you know, be somewhere else. And, my sisters and everyone were just trying to figure it all out. And we were just kids. I was the eldest at 11, but we were just kids. And here we were trying to figure out all of these very complex things. But all I knew was the humiliation of my parents separating and divorcing. Like that was just something that did not happen in the world at that time. I mean, of course it did, but it just didn't happen in my circle. And so I didn't know much about it. And it was very distressing to me. The journey from there was, I lived with dad for a little while, and then mom took us back. She got us back. And then there was, visitation with dad on the weekends. And so it was this back and forth thing. And then when I was 14, I got mad because I think I got in trouble for going out and getting drunk one day. Yes, 14-year-old little rebel. And so I said, I want to go live with dad. I want to live with dad in the city. We lived in the country at the time. And so went back to the city living with dad and, really did prefer that. I thought this is much better, it's not as many kids and, it wasn't as loud or noisy. It was quite quiet and reserved. And so I just felt better. I didn't always get along with my stepmom. And, we had our challenges through those teenage years, that's for darn sure. But here's what I discovered, when I look back there, as troubled as I was and how hard it was to simply show up day by day, there was something about it that taught me some new things about life and about people. And one of the things that happened consistently was people would always be bringing me their problems. Everybody would come to me and tell me their problems. And that's still happening today. I treat it a little differently now than I did then, but that was kind of a big thing that was happening. And I noticed that a lot of people were unhappy as well. But I met a boy, I was 15, I met a boy, fell in love, and got pregnant. I thought for certain my father was going to kill me because, that's what parents say when you're a teenage girl and they're worried about you fooling around. Anyway, I finally, when I'm about, oh gosh, I must have been at least 4 months pregnant, when I finally tell my dad, and I'm sure he'd probably already guessed because I was putting on weight. I was a really skinny kid, and all of a sudden I'm putting on this weight. And he said, no problem. He said, break up with the boy, and you can live here, and you can keep the baby if you want, and you can raise the child here. And I was like, I'm not breaking up with this boy. He's the love of my life. Are you kidding me? So I went back to live with my mom. And she agreed that I could get married. And so at 16, I got married for the first time. And that started a whole other journey. There was a dream that I had as a kid that, you get married and it's all happiness and sunshine and rainbows and everything is sweet, and beautiful and fun and interesting. And you have this person who loves you and you get to do stuff that your parents can't say anything about. You're not going to get grounded anymore, all that good stuff. But it didn't turn out that way. The reality of being married was far different than what we expected. And it wasn't long before I was being hit and yelled at. And I did a lot of yelling myself as well. We would throw dishes at, at each other, or maybe it was me throwing dishes at him. I can't remember. But anyway, it was very abusive. And that continued. That continued for, well, the better part of 2 years. And I know for certain that he loved me. I never questioned that. But he came from a home that, his dad was kind of brutal as well. And I think that it was just a learned behavior. That doesn't change how painful and difficult it was, because this was somebody that I loved deeply, that I thought loved me. But when I got hit or yelled at, I didn't feel loved anymore. And of course, that's what I would create, because that was kind of what my home life was like. So of course, I recreated. We were married for 2 years, and then I threw him out and tried to make it on my own from there. So joy isn't something that happens because life has been a bed of roses. It's something that happens because I've made a choice about it. I've decided that I'm going to live in this way. I'm going to have more joy in my life. I'm going to choose to be more outgoing. I'm going to choose to be nicer to people. And that was what started the journey, was just deciding that I'm going to do this differently. The whole process, of course, has taken many years. I mean, I was 27 when that epiphany happened. I'm 69 years old now. So we're talking 42 years later. But the reality is that the journey that brought me here is the journey that saved my life. I truly believe that. I truly believe that. So I think, when we bring it home spiritually, when we decide to take this story deeper, we start to realize that it isn't something elusive. It's something that we all possess. It's within each and every one of us. And so all we have to do is tap into it. So we're going to take a short little commercial break right now, and then we're going to be back with how we begin to create more joy in our lives. Don't go away. We'll just be a moment.
Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you.
And we're back. Well, here's, the truth about joy, like I said, is that it exists within each and every one of us. It's not something we need to find or earn. It's there. It's just a matter of turning to it and making that choice. I know that previously in my life, I would rather be right than happy, but I've since changed that. And I decided that being happy was far more rewarding than being right. And so that changed the game for me. One of the things that happened throughout my life that has been a bit of a challenge, because I was raised in a household where there was, a lot of fighting and, raging going on, I found that I repeated that. So, like I mentioned, I got married. I was married for 2 years, got divorced, met my second husband when I was about, I think, just turned 19. And we got together and we got married a few years later. We had 2 sons. In my first marriage, I had a daughter. So I now had 3 children, and my marriage was not doing so well. Like I said in the beginning, I was separated from my husband when I had my spiritual epiphany. But here's the thing, when I had that epiphany and returned to my marriage and started really working on making it work, I also was going to church on the regular, and he was not into church at all. So I became this very religious woman, and he wasn't having it. So he left me in July. So we were together from February to July, and then he was gone. And we'd been together about 8 years. Our boys were 4 and 3, and my daughter at the time was 12. And I was left. I was left with this feeling like, how did that happen? Why did that happen? I really didn't understand it. And it really was hell. My boys were acting out terribly. They really missed their dad. They would see him on the weekends, but in the meantime, all week they would just do nothing but fight and scream at each other and carry on. It was a really difficult time. And I decided that I would just take my life because that would be easier than what was going on. And so I made a plan. I got the kids looked after, and I'm getting ready to head out to do the deed. And I get a phone call. And the phone is ringing, and I'm debating ignoring it. But at that time, I wasn't good at ignoring a phone call. So I grab the phone, answer it, trying to get off it quickly. And this woman's on the other end, and she said, "You don't know who I am, but I sit behind you at church. I sit 3 rows back." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she said, "You've been on my mind for like the last hour or so, and I just can't seem to get you off. So I thought I'd better give you a phone call." And I was like, "Well, I'm really busy. Thank you for calling, but I do need to get going." And she wouldn't let me off the phone. She just kept saying, "Yeah, but there's a reason why I called, and I don't know really what it was." And after a few minutes of trying to get her off the phone, I burst into tears and told her what my plan had been. I don't know how that happened, but that woman saved my life. Why she called, how she knew, what, I have no idea. But it really created a new understanding for me, a new understanding that there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I'm, going through what I'm going through, and I need to persist. I need to stay. And, a couple of months later, I met another man, third husband, got married again, but this guy was even worse than the first one. He would yell and scream. He would withhold finances. He would say horrible things to me. He abused me mentally, physically, sexually, financially. It was a nightmare existence, really. And it was something that I stuck with for a little while, not very long. I think we were together for 3 or 4 years. And then I left, and it was like, what a relief that was. And again, you'd think that I could have, sort of called it quits at that point. But what was fascinating is I ran into an old teacher of mine. Her name was Carolyn Baxter. And I ran into her at the Center for Positive Living, of all places. And I was like, "You go here?" And we got chatting. She had been my school teacher in grade 10 and the first month of grade 11 before I quit school. And she started talking to me about all kinds of different things. And she suggested I read a book. And the book that she asked me to read was Louise Hay, How to Heal Your Life. Or Heal Your Life. What's it called? Heal Your Life. And I bought the book. I read it. And I was absolutely blown away by it. I started really, when I left my third husband, I started going to the center regularly. I started taking classes at the center, and I knew I was studying for ministry. I knew that was my next step. There was no question that this was the teaching that would get me there, the science of mind. And the science of mind has really transformed my life in ways that I can't even begin to tell you in an hour all the things that have occurred that have brought me to this time and place. But I have 4 children. One was born when I was 16 years old. My last child was born when I was 48 years old. I've been married 5 times. Yeah, marriage wasn't very good for me. But this time around, it's worked, and we've been together for 24 years. The journey that we're on is one of living life moment by moment, because that's all we've got are these moments. And we have a choice about how we live them. And we can choose joy. We can choose to be happy rather than right all the time. Instead of fighting for something, we can stand and allow things to occur with a greater sense of ease. So I acknowledge that joy isn't a mood. It isn't a personality type. It's not pretending that everything's fine. Joy is a decision to stay open. And I think through all of the things that I've gone through, when I started studying science of mind, it was like a breath of fresh air. But it only happened because I was open to it. Joy is choosing love when fear would be easier. And joy is returning to yourself again and again and again. That journey to the self, it seems like it should be easy. And I know it is for some people. But there are some of us that have kind of separated who we are from who we want to be, or who other people have decided we are. And we're journeying along, struggling, trying to figure out how I fit. How do I belong? Where do I go? And the truth is that each and every one of us is essential. No one was made by mistake. Every single one of us created perfect, whole, and complete. And so it's about coming to terms with who we really are. And when we do that, then we end up falling in love with who we are, the person that we truly are. So joy is choosing love when fear would be easier. And joy is returning to yourself again and again and again. Joy isn't something I figured out. It's something I kept choosing day by day, moment by moment, and I still do. I have a choice. I have a choice to be right. I have a choice to be happy. I have a choice about what I do and how I do it, and even how I feel about the things that I do. So I want you to think about this question a little bit. What brings you back to joy when life pulls you away? What brings you back to joy when life pulls you away? Oh, good question, isn't it? So it could be a person, nature, prayer or meditation. It could be music. It could be a service of some sort. It could be a memory. And if you feel comfortable, you can put those things in the comment section. The journey that we're on is unique to us. And it's a journey without a destination. Yes, I did say that. It is a journey without a destination. See, there's nowhere to get to. We're here and then we're gone. Where am I in between? What am I doing on the regular that is making life easier or harder for me? See, it's all just a journey. It's all just a journey. And how we get there and what we do and how we do it, it's personal. No one can tell you who you are. I mean, they will. Don't get me wrong, they will tell you who they think you are. But the truth is, only you know. And I hear far too often people saying, well, I don't know. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. And that's one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. I don't know. The truth is, we do know. Whether we can admit it or not is another story, but at some level, we do know exactly who we are and what it is we're here to do, to bring whatever. We know this, and we know it deep, deep, deep within. And so we have to allow that to come up into our consciousness, into our conscious awareness. Because until it does, we're going to be a little bit lost trying to be something we're not. When we wear these masks, we wear one mask when we go on our first date, and we wear another mask when we meet the in-laws, and we wear another mask when we go to a job interview, and something else yet again when we start a new job or when we go to work. When we remove these masks, what remains is the authentic self, the true self. And that part of us has actually not been touched by any of the pain and struggle of our life. That part of us has remained and will remain perfect, whole, and complete. What we're working on is more of the ego self, the self in this world and the experiences we have here, because that's what we can see and touch. Yeah, it's something we can see and touch. And when we can see and touch something, it allows us to kind of open up and start to believe it. When we can see something concrete, we can believe it. And the thing is, we don't believe everything. We don't necessarily believe a lot of things, but that doesn't mean they're untrue. It just means we have no reference point for them. So it's time to begin to shift that, to start to create something that has some power and some might and some strength in it. This show has never been about perfect lives. It's about real lives, lives lived with heart. And I'm really, really grateful you're here with me in that. There are no perfect lives, and yet each one of us individually is perfect. But the lives that we lead are troubled in many ways, and a lot of it because we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten why we're here. And I believe that we're here to live. Yeah, live. Live perfectly, live joyfully, live however you want to live. Just live. Allow yourself to be a part of life, whatever that looks like. And the more you can do that, the more likely you are to create something fantastic in your life and in your world. And life will get easier. And the result is joy. See, this is what I discovered, is that when I stopped trying to be right all the time, when I stopped being a know-it-all and a bit of a cranky person, when I stopped all those things, I ended up finding myself as a more compassionate and kind person. But I also noticed that my life was better than I thought it was. And I began to look at it closely. And I started to see the joy that was there. I started to see the perfection of each moment. And as I did that, I began to have a deeper appreciation for everyone else who shares the planet with me. So, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we change up the script? How do we start seeing ourselves in new light? Well, there's a number of things we can do. We can choose to, we can choose to think positive thoughts. We can choose to be loving even when things get difficult. We can use positive affirmations and meditation to begin to clear the mind of the negativity. It's hard to clear up something you can't see. And of course, our belief system, for the most part, we can't see it until we've created something in our lives that illustrates it. Then we see it, right? But we want to make sure that we take the time to appreciate life. Appreciate life. Appreciate the people around us. How can we show love and appreciation to everyone we come in contact with? But that's what's required. When you take a new job position, there will be requirements. What are the requirements you're faced with? Are they easy to navigate, or are they really difficult? Hard to say, right? Hard to say. So this journey, and I often speak about this in my services as well, is that this journey is one without a destination. We're here to live, not put in time. And I see far too many people putting in time. Oh, I'll be happy when I have a child. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I land a job. I'll be happy when I have more money. I'll be happy when. When is not a specific time. It does not exist. And because it doesn't, there will never be a point where I will actually be able to satisfy that when and actually achieve what it is I say I want. So I had to flip the script. I had to do it different. I had to look at what was going on in my life and take responsibility for it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not to blame for it. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is I acknowledge my part that got me into trouble. I acknowledge that. And because I acknowledge it, I can, in fact, turn around and let it go. I can let it go. I don't have to keep holding on to it. When I got married the fourth time, I thought, oh, this is it. I met the one. But it wasn't. And at one point in time, I come home from somewhere, and all of a sudden I hear fighting downstairs, and he's fighting with one of my sons. Verbally at first, and then, he grabbed him, and that was enough for me. I decided then and there the marriage was over. 4 down. When I decided to move to Toronto from Calgary to start the center here, that happened quite incredibly as well, because it was in my first year of classes that my minister said that, there's no way that anyone will hire me out of school, so I'll have to start a center. And I said, fine, I'll start one in Toronto. I said it a little bit flippantly, but not. It's like at some level I knew that Toronto was definitely the place for me. But that took some work to get myself believing that and to actually make the physical move. But make it I did. And I just worked on everything that I needed to in order to be ready. And, doing my studies, which took 5 years. And then when that was done, I still didn't feel like it was time to come to Toronto. So I ended up going to Vernon, BC. And I stayed there for 18 months and looked after the center there. At the end of that 18 months, I knew it was time. Time to go to Toronto. Time to start Science Mind out here. Time to share this with Eastern Canada. That was my next step. And when I got here, well, on a wing and a prayer, shall we say. I had $40 in my pocket. I had 2 suitcases of summer clothing because I arrived in July. I knew one person who lived in Oakville, and that person picked me up in Hamilton at the airport. I spent the night at her place and then went on to Toronto the next day. Now here's the thing. $40, 2 suitcases of summer clothes, my mini stereo, and my cassettes. That's what I had. That's all I had. That's all I had in the world. It's all I had in the world, and it was enough. And so I began the journey of dismantling my life prior to that moment, dismantling what I believed about life. I changed my inner conversation. I changed the dialogue that I would have. I worked on stopping complaining. And one of the things I stopped was playing a victim. I stopped playing a victim. I stopped telling my victim story over and over and over again. I stopped talking about being a battered housewife. I stopped. Because I got the true sense that here I was constantly reliving the punishment, the pain that I went through. I kept reliving it. Which felt really bad, really, really bad. It was terrible. So as I came to terms with that, I decided never again will I allow somebody to yell at me, beat me, swear at me. There's no way I'm doing that ever again. And I am willing I'm willing to be okay with it. I'm willing to realize that I was there, but now I'm not. So I can make sense of it and I can change it. And what a joy that brings when we get to that place of change. So joy, just one you. Yeah. Just one you. There's never been a story and will never be another you. Like, you're one of a kind. You're unrepeatable. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your joy matters. This is the Joy Show. And the Joy Show is all about individual lives and how they've gotten to be where they are. And it's not because we've all done it perfectly, because most of us have not done it perfectly. Most of us have struggled in one way or another. I look at my life journey, 5 husbands, 4 children, 3 different fathers for those children. And somehow, some way, I keep getting up every day and choosing joy. Not because it's easy, because some days it can be a little more difficult. You know, we hear something on the news, which I really try to avoid is the news, but people tell me. And when I hear really horrific stories, I have to then take time to clear my consciousness again so that I remember who I really am and then begin to change things. One step at a time. One step at a time. Well, this has been good. There's so much more I could tell you. There's so many more things that have gone on in my life to bring me to now. But I'll tell you, I love my life. I love what I'm doing. I love the people that I work with, and I love my center. I love the ability to bring people a sense of possibility in a difficult time in our history. I feel grateful that people will turn to me for support or help. And I'm grateful that I'm willing to look after myself, that I'm willing to really honor who I am and to celebrate who I am moment by moment and day by day. It really is a marvel. There never has been and will never be another you. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your joy matters. This is the Joy Show. Always remember, there's just one you. You are unrepeatable. You're precious and special and beautiful, like everyone else. So until next time, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for participating. So today, I just want you to know that as we close, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, not just today, but for every time you show up to listen, to reflect, to grow. Thank you for being here. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. You're watching the New Thought Media Network, and this is The Joy Show. Bye for now, and I'll see you next time.